Hi there, this is Jeanette Comerford, and this is day 9 of my Christmas series for 2016. Today we'll be making a card featuring stamps and dies from Whimsy Stamps, and it's just a simple little woodland sort of scene with the silhouettes of these sweet little animals, and I'm going to take you through how I stamp them and cut them and how I put the card together. It is a shaker card, so there is some glitter and some beads inside the card to make it a little bit special. So here's the stamp set and the dies. I'll also be using these rectangular dies, the Christmas die, and some landscape dies. In this paper pack, there is an amazing paper that looks just like a starry sky, so I knew that that is what I wanted to use for the background of my woodland scene. So I'm cutting that out with my largest die here. Then I'll be cutting out some Neenah cardstock. So I'm going to be cutting it out one time, and I'll be using that piece to cut the snow drifts with my landscape dies. And I'll be cutting it a second time. And on this one, I will be then taking the second largest rectangular die, and I'll be fitting it in the inside. Once I've cut this, you'll see me lift the die off, and then I'm going to put the smaller one and just align it over the center. And this way I'm going to be able to make a nice frame for my shaker card. I really like to cut everything out using the large die, even though you don't really have to. It just makes lining everything up that much easier. So again, I'm taking that larger die, I'm cutting out some vellum, and that also I will be cutting with one of the landscape dies to make a snowdrift. And so I'll be lining vellum over top Neenah cardstock, and it gives like a really nice look. And then the last thing I'm going to be cutting with this die is a piece of acetate. So that will help me make the shaker components stay inside the shaker. Next thing I'm going to do is just take the sort of rounded landscape die, and I'm going to cut that piece of Neenah cardstock out. And then I'll just sort of line it up a little bit over the vellum to get an idea of where I want the next die to go. And you can see it's a different shape. It sort of slopes downwards, and I'll cut that out of vellum, and those will be sort of put one on top of the other. Now that little piece that was cut out when I used the second largest rectangular die to cut the window frame, I'm going to use that piece. I'm not going to throw it away. I'm going to use that piece to cut out the 3 little woodland creatures that I'm going to use. And I'm going to be sharing with you a different technique or another technique to line up your die cutting. So once I've die cut them, I'm just going to put them in the little envelope so I don't lose them. But I'm going to keep that negative one. I'm going to keep that for later use. I also was able to fit the Christmas sentiment on top of it, so I'm just cutting that out. So I'm not wasting any paper whatsoever. And that die cuts so beautifully. So I'll just take some tape. This is my ATG adhesive gun, and I will adhere that onto a card base. This is an A2 sized card base. Then I'll take the white Neenah that was cut into a snowdrift. I'll put that right over top. And the vellum I'm not going to adhere down with anything right now. Once I add elements on top of it and adhere those down, it will stay down. So now I'm going to secure a piece or a scrap of Neenah cardstock onto my Misty here. I'm going to actually put a little bit of post-it tape so nothing moves, so that I can stamp the deer. So I'm just using some soft brown ink to stamp it out. And now to cut it out, you're going to see I'm going to line up that negative. Remember I said don't throw it away. I'm going to line it up so that I can see exactly where the die cut would go, so that I can have a nice even space of white around the whole image. I'll pop in the piece that I die cut earlier. Now I'm going to ink it up. I'm using two inks. I'm using the soft brown again, just sort of around the left side, and then I'll ink it up totally with soft sand, and that gives you a little bit of like a two-toned color. And you can see how now I was able to stamp it exactly on the die cut so that it lines up perfectly. So if any of you have been having problems, sometimes when I'm die cutting it, if I stamp the image and then die cut it, sometimes I'm a little off. And for this card in particular, I really did want that white line around the image to be perfect. So this is another way to do it. So you stamp it one time on a piece of paper. You take that negative. Here I've actually put a little bit of post-it tape behind the negative so that when I put the die cut in, it's going to stay put since it's so little. So I'm going to slip that little bunny die cut out and it's going to stick to the post-it tape. Then you can ink it up again. I did it twice here, and then you get a perfectly stamped image on your die cut. I'll be doing the same thing for the little bird. So again, stamp it once on the paper. I'm using, I think this is pale tomato. I'll list all the ink colors that I used at the bottom of this video. And again, I'm using that negative with a little bit of post-it tape behind it. Line it up so that I can see that it's completely perfectly symmetrical all the way around. Pop in my die cut, re-ink the stamp, and then just swing down the window of the MISTI. So if you want precise stamping on your die cuts, that's the way to do it. Now there is no die cut for the tree, so I am going to just stamp it on some paper here, again Neenah cardstock. I used some dark brown ink and then I went in with some lighter ink. And then I'll just cut that out by hand with a pair of scissors, making sure to leave a tiny sort of silhouette of white all the way around it. So I'm not going to show you that entire process. It did take me a little bit of time, but it wasn't very hard. I mean, the lines are pretty clear. So once that's all cut, I'm able to sort of decide where I want to put it on my card, using that frame as a guide to make sure that it's where I want it to be. Just placing all the components. I am going to put that sentiment over the window, but I want to make sure that the bird is not in the way. And then once I'm happy with the way everything is, I can start gluing things down. So like I said, that vellum is not glued down yet, but once I glue the tree to the pattern paper and then also to the vellum will sort of stick in place. So I'll put the tree, press down, making sure that everything is lined up, and I just ended up using the Zig glue for everything. It's kind of easy to glue down components that have a lot of little areas, like the little ears here on the bunny. So that's just, find it a little bit easier to do. I'll put the bird on the branch here. I love that little pop of red in the card. Then, not to forget, I need to add adhesive to the back side of the frame here. Then I can add the acetate onto that. And then I use some foam, actually 2 layers of foam. So I had to cut the foam in half, and then I just laid one piece on top of the other. So I had a double layer. I'm using my little anti-adhesive bag here, just so that the glitter doesn't stick too much to everything. I'm adding just some seed beads and some fine glitter to the inside. Now I'll just peel back the release paper from that foam tape, and then I'll lay the card over top of it, lining it up, and I've created my little shaker card. So you can see the little seeds in there. They're like little glass beads. They're sort of moving around, and the glitter as well. Just trim off any of the foam if it's sticking out. And then for the Christmas sentiment, I'll be using that Zig glue pen again. It has such a nice fine tip, so it's really easy to sort of trace the lettering everywhere so that it will stick down firmly and you won't lose it. I'll just lay that on top of the card. I'll put a mounting block on top of that for a little bit of time for it to dry nice and flush to the acetate, and my card is done. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick and easy little shaker card using the cute woodland creatures die and stamp set from Whimsy. A full list of supplies can be found below this video on YouTube or my blog. Thanks for watching.